And welcome everyone to our next edition of Tech Tips, ACC Tech Tips. So joining me this week is my colleague Shane Meyer. He's based out of our Seattle office. So Shane, if you want to do just a quick introduction for yourself, and then we'll get right into it.
Yeah, thanks, Vince. Good morning, everybody. My name is Shane Meyer, and like Vince said, I'm based out of our Seattle office. I'm an applications expert here at IMAGINiT, and my main focus has been the Autodesk Construction Cloud, specifically Build and our Docs apps. So Vince and I will be going through RFIs and submittals today, just to show you some quick tips and tricks on how to use it and get the best out of your product.
Thanks, Shane. And if you are new to our ACC tips and tricks sessions, then I'd just like to share this screen. If you're coming back, then you already know the format, but the intent of these are just, we're really focused on one or two topics in these sessions. The agenda is somewhat loose, so this one may be a little bit more structured than the other ones that I've done. Shane and I went over some things yesterday to just kind of position this presentation, but we really do want it to be an open forum for questions. So if any of you have any specific questions that you might have around RFIs and submittals, feel free to enter them in the Q&A section, and we'll make sure to address those. With both of us here, we can be taking a look at those as they come in, or if we want, maybe just wait till the end. So I'll be keeping an eye on it when Shane is showing his screen. I'm sure Shane will be keeping an eye on the Q&A panel when I'm sharing. So feel free, throw your questions in, and if it's relevant to what we're covering, we'll cut in and answer the question, or try to. So yeah, but generally, those questions might lead to us going down different rabbit holes in general discussion. So that is the format. All right, so I just made a couple of slides for this one. I think important information about sharing about submittals and RFIs in ACC Build. Just some things that you need to know, I guess some general setup or configuration around both submittals and RFIs. It can definitely be a bit confusing because you might think of RFIs and submittals, they both have approval workflows, but they are kind of set up differently with permissions, and you need to understand how those permissions are arranged and configured within your project environments. So just a few things to know about submittals first, and then I have another slide for RFIs. Project admins can assign any project member, role, or company as a submittal manager. So I just have this screenshot here directly from ACC Build. If you are a project admin, you'll have access to the settings of your submittals, and that first tab in the settings allows you to assign, again, members, roles, or companies as a submittal manager. So the one thing that's a little bit odd about this is that where it shows us the type, it just says user, but anyone that you assign in here, again, whether it's a member, role, or company, if they are added to this permissions area under submittals, that deems them or assigns them as the submittal manager. So they're the ones that can really activate or initiate the submittal review approval process. They don't necessarily have access to these same settings, the settings area, that would only be a project admin, but you'll see through the workflows here that the manager is really the one who initiates a workflow and that can control any particular submittal that they have been assigned to, or that they pull from their submittals list. The submittal manager can assign anyone in the project to review a submittal, but this does not allow us to associate a role or a company to the review workflow. So this one is definitely something that is kind of unique, well, definitely unique to the submittal workflows. When we go to add people, we can only add individual members for the project. So we cannot add a role or a company as the reviewer of any one submittal that we initiate an approval on. And then finally, well, we'll show this live, but that can be done directly in the submittal. So we don't have to have a a review template in order to assign a person to review a submittal, you can just add them as a reviewer, and you can add steps to that submittal directly in the submittal itself. Or to make things a little bit easier, what you can do is you can create review templates. And this is really where, in our example, we're going to use a lighting product or a lighting spec for submittal approval. If we had different designations for submittal review workflows, we can associate the correct people to that submittal template. So the one example I pulled in here in the project that we're going to be using, we just called this one lighting. I created the review template, and then I assigned Shane as my reviewer. So when that submittal gets opened, you can pick that review template of lighting, and then Shane automatically gets designated. Or this could be Shane and other people on his team to be able to review and approve that submittal. And then we can also assign optional reviewers. The main reviewer is the one who has to move that submittal forward. But if Shane and other people on his team needed to be aware of or informed that that submittal has been initiated or opened, then we can add people to that review list so that they're informed of it as well. So a few things that we can set in the review templates. We can assign that reviewer, optional reviewers, and we can associate a default review time. So the default comes in at 14 days to review, but you can increase or decrease that as you see fit. Cool. So that's just some pretty basic or general information around submittals and their setup. For RFIs, a few other things. RFIs are a little bit more, I wouldn't say free or flexible. It's just a different kind of format that we have to be aware of for an RFI. There are two workflows available, and I've screen capped both of these workflows. So the default workflow just includes a manager, a reviewer, and essentially the creator, the person who poses the RFI or creates the RFI. So that's the default workflow. So it goes creator to manager to reviewer, back to the manager, manager answers it or approves the answer, and then it goes back to whoever created that RFI. The other workflow is a coordinator workflow. So this would be for companies that potentially have a whole bunch of RFIs for projects, and there's someone specifically assigned to certain RFI types or for the entire project as the RFI coordinator. And in this workflow, it's just an added step. After the manager opens the RFI, they can either respond back to the creator of the RFI and close it to say, we've already answered this, or this is provide some documentation or something. So basically the RFI is closed right away. Or if the manager deems it, yes, we need to respond to this, we need to provide an answer, the manager can then push that to the RFI coordinator, who then decides who the reviewers need to be, and it kind of cuts the manager out of the approval process until the very end. Once the answer has been received, the coordinator can review it, either push it back to the reviewer, or if the coordinator thinks it's a valid answer, they can push it then forward back to the manager. Manager can review it. If they deem that a valid answer, then they can close it. So these workflows are good. These are embedded. I'll show you where you can get to these if you're a project admin in a build project. These are simply right in the settings. You can click on see the detailed workflow to pull these charts up. But beyond the workflows, a few other things here. When we set up our RFIs, I'll show you this live, but there are different permissions, and we call them roles in the RFI. I tried not to call it roles in the slide because that might be confusing, but RFIs themselves, we can designate either people, companies, or project roles as creators, managers, coordinators, or reviewers. So there are more permission levels associated to an RFI workflow than we would have for a submittal workflow. So just something to keep in mind. And the RFI types. So RFI types are essentially the templates that we can create for the RFI. And those can include roles, companies, and or users, unlike the submittal templates, which are that just allow us to associate members to the submittals. Okay. So with that, we'll go ahead and share. Now, Shane and I have set up, we're going to go through a submittal first, and we wanted to have both of us on this call because we can show you this from both sort of the manager perspective and the reviewer perspective. So let me see here, get out of the PowerPoint. All right, let's pull that up earlier. Get into that in a minute. So we have this project that we've set up. Shane and I use this LTU East Residence Hall project a lot for different reasons and different demos. This one in particular, I set this up a while ago. We have this really, really long submittal list within this project, and most of these submittal items are called draft. The reason that these are draft is that I actually used Pipe AutoSpec to import or bring in my submittals. So if you aren't aware already, Pipe AutoSpec is a solution that allows us to upload a project specification, and it does OCR recognition to basically extract all of the submittal items from the spec. We can refine it in Pipe, and then when we feel like it's ready to push into build, we can then make that push. We can export it from Pipe and import it into build. Pretty recently, probably in the last couple of months, Autodesk has integrated, and actually I don't have it in this project. I'll show you here with assets. I think I have it in this project. Autodesk has integrated Pipe AutoSpecs into the ACC platform. This does require, in order to get this integration for AutoSpec, it does require the building ops bundle. So if you just have Autodesk Build, you will not have access to AutoSpecs integrated into Build. If you just have Build and a separate license of Pipe without the building ops bundle, you will not have access to this. Now, I did have Pipe open, but the session timed out here. There's just kind of some area of confusion about this for our customers, so I'd like to point this out. If you do have access to Pipe, we'll call it a standalone license, you can still create your submittals and upload your specs. So this is what I used actually to push that submittal into the submittal log into Build from Pipe before that AutoSpec was integrated into Build. But you would still have access to manage the submittal registry here in Pipe, and then it's just a simple push over into the submittals module of Build. So it basically takes all of the text information that we manage in AutoSpecs, formats it into the correct import format that Build accepts, and it uploads it. So we just connect it to our project that we want from Pipe. So just a little bit of behind the scenes background there on how we set that up. So if I wanted to push it into the, I don't know why my LTU, I don't know why it's not showing the project that I currently have open. Maybe because we already pushed it into that project, but we can pick our projects from Build. You have to be logged in with your Autodesk ID and Pipe for this to work, but then you hit next, and then it goes through a couple of steps, and you can create that submittal registry over here in Build. Now, obviously, if we don't have Pipe, that's okay too. We just have to manage the submittal creation in really one of two ways. We can either create specific submittals. Now this one, because I imported it from Pipe, it automatically detects all of my spec sections and descriptions that I can choose from to create a new submittal item. We can title them. We can assign what type of submittal that is. And we can choose from our templates if we want to predefine a template. Now I'm able to do this because I am a manager of the submittals. So I'm able to create a submittal, choose the template. Someone like Shane, who we've set up in this project, that is not a manager and not a project admin, would not be able to do this. Shane's role in this project is to simply respond to submittals once he's been assigned as a reviewer. So I'm able to see all of this. When we get to Shane's role in this, he can show you that he'll only be able to see the submittal that he's technically been invited to. But because I pulled these in from AutoSpecs, I see all of these draft items as kind of a placeholder before I initiate the submittal. And the other option, if you don't have Pipe AutoSpecs, instead of creating these line by line individually, which would take forever, you do have the option to import items. And I do believe I have to be a project admin in order to import into this, not just a manager, but a project admin. And this does come with a sample download, which is basically a little template that you can input your submittal information into here. So if you have an Excel spreadsheet that you have all of your submittal information in, you basically copy and paste it over into this workbook, and then you can import this into the submittals module for build to create your submittal registry within ACC. So one other thing I'll point out about this import is that any of these columns that are highlighted in green, these are the required columns. So anything that's not highlighted, you do not have to put information into those cells, but all of the green areas, which I scroll to the right, but any of these green areas, so the spec section, section names, titles, and submittal types have to be input in order for the import to work correctly. And as things are added, so maybe use this import initially and you populate it with all of your submittal log, your submittal registry to import it into build. If you add to this list and use the same file, it will only add the new items to that submittal log in build. So you can use this to kind of manage that process if you don't have other programs like AutoSpec that can basically integrate or push that information to create your submittal registry in build. Okay. But we've already done that. So that's it. I guess a couple of other things I should point out. If we want to package together submittal items, so if we have a certain section of the spec that we just essentially want to create a package of, let's go, we're using interior lighting for this one. We are able to create packages and then add specific submittals that were brought in to that package. So we can gather, let's see if I can search for lighting. All right, so those are different. Create a package and let's go back to our items. So I think here, and we can add to those. So if we want to package them up, that'll help for closeout and gather all of the shop drawing information into one packaged item as opposed to everything individually. You are able to do that. But the one that we set up here, okay. So we kept this one blank for now. We kind of worked through, uploaded some documents that would help us go through this start to finish. So again, let me just show the settings that we have set up here, just a review from what I showed in the PowerPoint. Currently in this project, I am the only submittal manager in the project. So I have the ability or the visibility to see all of these items on my items page under submittals. So all of these drafts, anything that's been closed, anything that's currently open, and you can use your typical filters to filter through this list. So the one filter we have applied just to make this easier is the interior lighting one there. So you saw I removed the admin requirements, and now we see that there is only the one for interior lighting. I don't know why. Let's see. So that one was our exterior lighting, which makes sense. So should have just called this, yeah, that makes sense, lighting fixtures. So in the package. So anyway, interior lighting, submittal. If I click on that, now because it was already a draft, when I click on that as the manager, it does bring me into the details of that submittal. And because we used auto spec, it pulled in the description that was populated from, let's copy this. Directly from auto spec. So let's close that out, search again. Do I have other filters? Don't know why that's not filtering down. But anyway, I promise you that this was pulled from the import. So we've got the description, the spec section, the subsection, all of that in here, which we can always edit in draft mode. So if we wanted to change the description, change the priority, you can do all of this while it's in draft. But you can see here that currently, because I am the manager, I need to designate someone as a reviewer. So initially, I need to assign a responsible contractor. So in our little example here, I'm going to serve as the contractor as well. So the manager would initiate this, assign it to your contractor. Contractor would review the information in the submittal, and then if they have any requests for documentation, or if they have documentation to upload, they can assign references directly to the submittal here, set required dates, etc. And from this point, I need to assign Shane as the reviewer. So let me go to add review workflow, or I can choose template. So this is what I was talking about in the PowerPoint. In the submittal itself, we can add this manually. So if we do add review workflow, it just pops open this review workflow dialog on the right panel. And from here, we can add Shane as a reviewer, or multiple people as reviewers, optional reviewers, and we can set our review time. If we want this to be a multi-step approval, we can add steps to this. And cancel that and discard it. But because I've already taken the time to set up a lighting review workflow, instead of doing that manually, you might have a list of 20 different templates to choose from, but in this case, we only have one. And if I choose lighting, this will automatically assign this to Shane as my reviewer. And now, let's assign it to the responsible subcontractor, who is me. We'll set the due date to this Friday, enter any notes. And so that step, everything up to that point, I was essentially serving as the manager of the submittal. Now, because we only have two of us on the call, I'm going to wear the hat of the contractor. So the contractor would then get a notification via email that they've been assigned this submittal. They would be able to then look at this, review any of the documentation or references that are associated, which I didn't assign anything to it yet. But the contractor then can submit this. When they click the submit button, it opens up a separate dialog box. So as the contractor, if I say, okay, we spec'd out a certain light fixture, we can either pull files directly from our computer, or if we already have the documentation for the specs or the shop drawings loaded into our build project, we can choose them from project files, And we just grabbed a spec sheet for a generic 2x4 light fixture in here. So as a contractor, I can pull that spec sheet, attach the copy. The manager might do this, but if there's additional information that we need to assign, at this point, it doesn't matter. So once I do this and click done, now contractor will submit that for review, and then it pushes over to Shane. So submit for review. The attachment's in there already. So now if I choose done, send it anyway because Shane can pull from that attachment. So now as Shane reviews this, he will get an email. Everything that I've done up to this point is being tracked in our activity log for this submittal. So Shane, give it a second because usually it takes a moment for you to get that notification via email. Let me know when you get the notification and we'll let you share your screen.
Yep, I'm all good on my end.
Okay, can you go ahead and do I have to make you presenter here? Let me see. There you go.
No, I got it. Yep. Okay, so now that Vince has gone through his process, this is what the email looks like when you get notified that you have a submittal that you have action required on. So as you can see, ball's in my court. It gives me all the general information that I need to know that I need to hop in here and take care of this by July 26th. As you go down here, you can click on the View Item tab, and this will actually load you straight into where you need to be. It loads right into the submittal that you're supposed to be working on. However, really quickly before I get into this, I am going to show you just what my submittals file looks like. So as of right now, because I haven't participated in any of them, I don't have anything on here. So now that I've gone through this process of being assigned this, close back out of that, this will start showing up once I've actually participated in it. So what I'll do here, let's go through and click review. And it has this whole tracker down here as well to show you what steps have already been completed. And you can see what the next one's going to be as well. So it does look like we did forget to attach a form here, but that's all right. Oh, actually, I don't know. We might have to go backwards a little bit.
Is I in the same project? Let me just make sure. Yep, East Residence. Okay. Have it submitted with the attachment. Let me step it back a second.
Yeah. So if you can still see my screen too, one thing you'll notice is that if I go to add things from project files, because I am just a member of the project and not a manager or anything else like that, I'm not able to go through and pull random files out of there. That has to be a different role or a different assignment that you have through the initial admin setup.
Should be good now. I just I forgot to click the copy button in that.
Oh, okay.
To send it over to you. So.
See what that looks like now. Okay, perfect. So yeah, now I can see exactly the file that Vince wanted me to review. I'm able to go through here and open it. And this is where things get even more interesting than before. So I'm able to go through and see exactly the document that he wanted me to look at, and I'm able to mark it up. I can go through here and I can use the pen tool. And let's say I just want to circle the catalog number just to highlight the fact that those are the ones we're going to be using. You can insert shapes because obviously not a great circle, much nicer looking than what I was able to make. As you go down here too, you can create a revision cloud. Let's say I go around this entire performance data chart. Move that just a little bit. And then I can add a text note next to this. So I can say, specify which size. Ooh, if I could type, that'd be helpful. To be used. Oh, except I didn't save it. Okay. So now that I've got that on there, That'll stay. And then as I get down to the bottom, I can also add the stamp that I want to have on this project. So as you go through here, I'll select what my response is going to be. I'll say approved as noted because I need to know which size. And then I'll say, please review size requirements, just to give them a heads up that they need to search through the whole submittal. And then you can also select which color. So if your company specifies that blue means something is finally approved, that's great. You have a whole wide range here. I'll leave it as red because it is as noted, and create stamp. So then I just get to move that around and drop it wherever I want it to be. Get that out of the data a little bit. And then go up here and click save. So now that I've saved it, I have it saved right here. I'll go up here and select the same response that I chose for the stamp and say, please review notes. So now that I've filled this out, they know that it's approved as noted. They'll have to go through and find whatever note I have on the submittal, and then they'll be able to adjust accordingly and send it back. So now it's back into Vince's court, so he'll be taking over his screen again, and we'll see him finish this one out.
All right, switch over, show mine. Okay, just refresh this. All right, there we go. So I can take a look at what Shane responded with, and all of that historic data for the submittal is logged here, which we can then go, all right, let's see. Let's not go to create new revision. So if I click on the latest, it usually takes a second for the markups to show. Did I click on the correct one?
This is the one that you submitted. So if you go down,
here we go.
Yeah.
So here's this, there's historically the review step 01. Here's the attachment that Shane marked up. So the nice thing about this is that it does create versions, essentially, or copies of the document. So the markups only exist in the one that Shane reviewed. I can read through his markups. There's his comments, specify which size to be used, and then approved as noted. So as the manager, if I wanted to throw that back to the beginning, we could create a revision and we could have it specified, highlight a certain spot of the spec. Or if I feel like, okay, he approved it, I'm going to go ahead and close and distribute this. So when we go to create a new revision, we can assign it back to the contractor, put in a note. And we'll set the due date again to Friday. And what that will do is it will automatically create a Rev 1 version of the submittal. And then we just have to go through that process again. So if I just kind of expedite this, we won't attach any of the documents. Because I am a project admin, I am able to submit on other people's behalves too. So submitting this back to Shane, send it without any attachments. I can even act as review on the behalf of Shane here. So once we've specified the correct size in this revision, we'll approve it. And then finally, we can take a look at that. And as the manager of the submittal, we can then close and distribute this. Now, once it's finished, and I don't know if it carries through, yeah, there wouldn't be any attachments in this revision. So as the manager, I suppose I could have specified the version, attached the document instead of rolling it all the way back to the contractor at the beginning. But let's see, contractor. And one option that they've updated in Build is they do give you this option to save the closed submittal item report to a folder in files. So we can actually, if we check this checkbox, any of the attachments that are part of this, which maybe I shouldn't have, or should have at least, let's go and attach. This one won't have the markups in it. but we'll just make an attachment here. Copy. If we want to inform anyone else in the project that this has been approved, then we are able to assign this notification, roles, companies. So if I chose IMAGINiT, all 5 members on our team here would be notified that this submittal has been closed and distributed. I'll just pick Melissa from this list as a watcher. And then because I checked the checkbox to save it to a files folder, we would just go into project files, maybe have a closed submittals folder in here already, but I'll just throw it there, save that. And then once it's processed, we can see that this is closed and approved. And going back to our main submittals area, it updates the status on that submittal. Another setting I think that is really important to point out to everyone. So again, as a manager, if I clear my filters out, I'm going to see all of the submittals, whether they're open, closed, draft, pending. But for someone like Shane in this project, who is only associated to certain submittal reviews, I don't necessarily want my lighting designer to see all of the closed submittals for structural or mechanical. So in the past, anyone that was a part of or that had access to submittals and build would be able to view any closed submittals. So they could actually see the list of closed submittals, click on things and get to the attachments and the information about those submittal items. You have the ability to turn that visibility off. So everyone can view closed submittals is currently turned on. If I turn that off, only the people, so the project admins, the submittal managers, and the individual, so in Shane's case, he'd be the individual involved in that lighting submittal. He's only going to be able to see the ones that are closed that he was involved in, either as a watcher or as a reviewer or an optional reviewer. So it's a nice setting here if you want to create some security or just limit the visibility that everyone has in the project for those closed submittals. You can turn this visibility off, and then those people will not be able to see the closed submittals. So I think that is kind of top to bottom everything that we want to cover about submittals specifically. We can jump over to the RFIs real quick. This is not, I feel like this is not as involved, but there's some cool stuff here that is worth pointing out. So with an RFI, we can either initiate RFIs from the field or through the web app. You can create an RFI directly in this module just by clicking on Create RFI. And that will open up a little form essentially that you would fill out about the request for information. So the question and then a suggested answer, pretty important ones to put in here. Before I jump into actually creating an RFI, I will point out that in the settings, so I mentioned this in the PowerPoint, the permissions area is definitely different in RFIs than it is in the submittals area. So under permissions, you can see that by default in build, when we create new projects, everyone has the ability to create RFIs. So all of the project members that are invited into a project has the ability to create an RFI. You can change that. You don't have to allow every project member to be a creator of an RFI, but it kind of makes sense that they would be. We've set this up where Shane, again, is set up as simply as a reviewer, and I am set up in the RFI as the manager. Now, there are other permissions, and we can associate or assign permissions to Shane outside of just reviewer, but you might be wondering, well, shouldn't he be a creator of RFIs too? He's going to inherit that ability because he is part of everyone. So if I want Shane to be a reviewer, I can set there, or we are able to, unlike the submittals area, we are able to pick from the roles that are established in the project or the companies that are part of this project. and we can set them as specific roles. I'm not going to do this for IMAGINiT because Shane is part of IMAGINiT, and if I set his permission as a manager here, then obviously he would inherit that permission because he's part of the IMAGINiT company. So I'm just going to not do that. So we've set this up a little bit already. I'm the manager, he's the reviewer. I'll show you that RFI types. We have 2 types to choose from. I mentioned that those workflows that I showed on my PowerPoint are available directly in here. So if you are a project administrator, you have access to the settings under RFIs, and you can create different RFI workflows. And there are really two workflow types to choose from. You either have the default one here, which is that same screenshot that I showed in the PowerPoint, or I created in this project a coordinator one where that adds a coordinator step. When you go to create these, create the RFI types, you can label it, name it here, and then you can select the workflow. From one of those 2. And then assign a default reviewer. You'll notice that here, the only reviewer that I can choose, even though we have 5 members in this project, the only reviewer that I can pick is Shane, because Shane is the only one who's been set up with the permission to be a reviewer of an RFI. So obviously in a real project, you would have a much larger list than this. And if we did assign a role-based permission as a reviewer, so say lighting designer is a role, then we could pick lighting designer, and anyone in the project who has been assigned as a lighting designer would then be able to respond to whatever, this lighting design RFI. Okay. And you can also set this up as a default type. So right now, the default RFI workflow is our default. It just has a 1-step review process, and Shane is the reviewer. So I don't have any additional people that would be part of that review. And go back to files. So if I create an RFI, because I am a manager, so this is one thing, I'll jump back to the PowerPoint really quick to explain this. Hopefully this is, let's see if I can zoom in. There we go. So in this first step, when something is created, if you only have create permissions within the project, then you are really only able to create a draft of the RFI. You'll see that the manager is also able to create a draft. So either creators or managers can create the draft. But in this case, because I'm the manager and I'm creating it, instead of just keeping it in a draft mode for the RFI, it automatically steps it forward to be an open RFI. So something I like to point out here, when I went to create an RFI, due to me being a manager, I'm able to create it, and it automatically opens that and assigns, I'm the assigned manager because I've created it. So it automatically goes to open for reviewer. I could step this back and make it a draft if I wanted someone else that was a manager in the project to then associate that to the correct reviewer or assign the right workflow to it. But in this case, we'll just skip that step. It automatically assigns the RFI number in the next ID in the next sequence. You could change that if you have a specific numbering system or if there's versioning for the RFI, which you can do revision. So kind of automatically can handle the revision numbering. Title it. Choose my workflow type, the default that we just went over. It automatically assigns the reviewer as Shane, so it sends the ball in court to Shane. If I wanted to associate anyone else as a co-reviewer, this is similar to that co-reviewer in submittals. So if we want anyone else to be able to make markups or view this RFI, they're able to, but they're not able to actually submit an answer on Shane's behalf. So he can maybe ask for other people on his team to help out, but they're not able to actually submit the official response. Select our due date, 14th. Question, did I don't have a suggested answer. Maybe find or see submittal, right? And then from here, we can add references. And if I choose submittals, the one that we've just closed shows at the top of this list. And we can add that reference to this RFI. We can assign cost impacts, schedules, priorities, and additional watchers to this. So if I wanted to make someone else in a project a watcher, just so that they're informed that this RFI is out there, we can assign them there. And once that RFI is created, so manager pushed it to the correct party to review it. Shane can now review this as the lighting designer and offer a response to whatever lighting fixture size is required. Let me see. So Shane, do you want to show that again, you get the notification and what that looks like in your email, and then we can close this one out?
Yep, I'll take over. Okay, so once again, hopefully you guys can all see this. This is exactly what the notification that comes to my email looks like. It looks exactly like the other one, has all the same information in it. However, it is assigned to an RFI, says who it is, ball in court, what the due date is. And once again, if I click view RFI, this will immediately load me into the RFI that we're working on. So same information, tells me all the stuff that I need to know. And I go through here and I click submit official response. So because as of right now, it's open. Let's see, hang on, actually. So here's the question. Did you specify the correct size for the light fixtures? If so, where is the documentation? What I would do is look back through anything else, all of my files, all of my sheets, and do my due diligence to answer this question. And then I would go to submit an official response, and I would say documentation is saved in project files, for example. See submittals. And then now that I know that that has been specified, I would say open answered. If I didn't have an answer for him, I could also change it to rejected, but I will be happy with this for today's session and click submit. So now it bounces back to Vince and he'll be able to close it out.
It probably, if I shouldn't have attached the submittal on my end, but Shane at that point answering it, he could have assigned the reference here as part of his answer as well. And that would have just shown in the activity log that Shane attached the file. So instead of verbally saying see submittals, he could attach the approved submittal directly to it. We're still in here. Refresh this. And we'll see that answer approved, and we can see what his response was. So right here, documentation is saved in project file, see submittals. I can hit close and distribute and send this to, well, any of the watchers are informed. So when we close this, all project members will be able to view this RFI, and that gets approved. So there are some additional advanced settings here. So same idea under the closed submittal, you can turn off the visibility for the closed RFI visibility. So if you wanted to make that so not everyone can see a closed RFI, you can turn that off. Another thing I meant to show during this, and I know we're getting close to our hour here, but when you go to create an RFI, so a lot of times customers will use the issues to kind of track things in the field or gather a whole bunch of different items within a document set using issues. So if I were to go into an area like sheets, I think we have an E series sheet in here. So let's search and filter by electrical to search my sheets. So say you had someone in the field or anyone reviewing the document on the desktop like this, they could go into a lighting new work plan and they can start to assign different issues. We'll just pull a generic design issue, but they can start creating issues all around. Maybe I'd create a general one for this entire section of the floor plan and say, you know, the lights in this room have not been specified or what size we need. So in the issue, maybe you record that. We call this, it's almost like an informal. I like to think of these as informal RFIs. So if something can be resolved really quickly, we don't need to do a formal RFI. But if there are a whole bunch of these issues created around one design topic or a punch list, or you name it, you know, we can designate different issue types and we can create custom issue types. Once we've gathered a number of these, when you go to create your RFIs, I almost think of this as like packaging the submittal. When you go into your references, when you create the RFI, you can associate issues and you can pick from all of those issues. You can filter this list. So if we did have an RFI type that was set to lighting design, then we could filter by that issue type, grab all of them, make those part of the RFI to send back to the lighting designer. So they have kind of a longer list than one thing to check to provide a response to. So there are different ways to package up these other items like issues into the RFI. And it should also point out, and I told Shane yesterday I was going to take the time to do this prior to the presentation, but I didn't. There is the opportunity in issues to create issue templates. And the issue template could be lighting design. We set that as a general design issue, and we can assign someone automatically into this issue template, assign watchers, root causes, whatever the template needs. And once this template is created, if we go back into sheets, instead of populating that with an assignee every time I need to create a lighting design issue, now when someone goes to create the issue, instead of picking the type and doing that all manually, we can go into templates, pick our lighting design issue, and I can start to drop in a bunch of these. Yeah, probably put in specific information about each issue. But then Shane's getting notified on all of these because he's the default assignee to this issue type. And again, this can be associated to a role. So if you had a role in your project of lighting designer, instead of assigning it to Shane, I would assign it to the lighting designer. We could change this logo here or update our type so it says LD for lighting design. But there's a lot of cool stuff that you can do once you've taken the time to do some light configuration in Build. So under the design category, we could say the issue category is design, issue type title, lighting design, and I want my pin label to be LD, make it active, any custom fields that we might have created for that issue type, and then in my template, now that I have a new type created for lighting design, I would just update my template and close that. Now, unfortunately, because I didn't do that before I place these issue types, it's not like it automatically changes it because I updated my template. So you could always come in here and change these manually or grab couple of them. Let me change one. Whoops, edit two. There we go. When you do this multi-select, you have to click the edit pencil up here to edit multiple, and then I can change all of their types to lighting design, save, and that will update. Cool. All right. Took basically the entire time again. So it doesn't look like we've got any questions. Let me go through my slide here.
Looks like we might have one question, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, the question is from Joseph. It says shareware.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe a comment at some point. They came in at 11:22. All right, well, maybe it just, makes sense to everyone. Are there any specific, does anyone have any specific questions about any of the workflows? If you do, you can type it into the Q&A. I don't see anything in the chat panel either. So if there aren't any more, and I know we're getting close to the top of the hour here, the next one in the series, this is one that I think is going to be really well attended. It's pretty underutilized area of build, and it's going to cover, we're going to cover site verification and tracking using QR and barcodes. So a couple of areas in build where we can assign QR codes and barcodes to locations within a job site, and also with assets that are in a job. So we'll show you the process for that, some cool tips and tricks, and just some general workflows around how those can be utilized and tracked within your project. Essentially using build as sort of a light facility management tool, or just helping with construction management and identifying status and information that's assigned to different things, different products, different assets that are on your sites. So go to IMAGINiT.com to register for that one, August 24th, so a little bit over a month from now. And if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to info@rand.com. Sarah, without asking you, put your email address on here as well. So yeah, keep in touch. If anyone has any specific questions, or something comes to mind about the session we covered today and you couldn't think of it right now, feel free to reach out and we'll make sure to get back to you.